Hi, this is Eve. Welcome to episode, whatever this episode is. Today will be two stories because they both are pretty short because there's not a whole lot of information about them, and they are both weird. They are about two women who received very strange phone calls and eventually ended up dead. It is about Dorothy Jane Scott and Cindy James. First, we will talk about Dorothy Scott. In May of 1980, Dorothy Jane Scott was 32 years old. She was a single mother of a 4-year-old son named Sean. She lived in Stanton, California with her son and her aunt, and her parents lived just 20 minutes away from her in Anaheim. Whenever Dorothy would go to work, she would drop her son off at her parents' house. This worked out perfect because she actually worked in the city of Anaheim. Dorothy's father's name was Jacob and her mother's name was Vera. She worked as a secretary at Swinger's Psych Shop, which sold stuff like psychedelic beads, lava lamps, and I guess hippie stuff. And then she also worked at Custom John's head shop right next door. As a side note, Dorothy's father Jacob was actually a joint owner of Swingers. She was described by her coworkers as a pleasure to be around, and her friends said she loved to go to church and that her life was as dull as a phone book, which really was a compliment because she was working hard and watched her son. She didn't go out and party or put herself in dangerous situations. She had no boyfriends. No one was aware of her dating anybody. She got along with her son's father. She was doing well and a good person and not getting herself into trouble. Sounds great. Sounds like she'd be in no danger whatsoever. However, having a consistent lifestyle makes you easily stalkable. And Dorothy Jane Scott was being stalked. In fact, she was being stalked for months by a man whose voice she recognized but just could not quite place it. This man would call her work phone, he would call her home phone, he would express his love for her, then he would threaten her and tell her that he would cut her up into pieces and no one will ever find her, and he would describe to her daily routine. So it was real, and at one point he even told her that she needs to go outside because he left something for her, and she saw a dead rose sitting on top of her car. So this was really worrying her. She started to take self-defense karate classes and was looking into purchasing a handgun. On May 28th of that year, 1980, she dropped her son off at her parents' house because she had to go into work for an employee meeting, and of course she wanted to be punctual, and so she was in a rush, dropped her son off, and left. She was wearing a black scarf when she left, which will be relevant soon. So this meeting wasn't like how you would think, like a 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. early morning meeting. It was in the late afternoon, and when she was there at the meeting, everyone was sitting around and the boss was talking, and Dorothy noticed that her fellow coworker Conrad Bostrom appeared to be in pain and in distress, grimacing and moving around just really uncomfortably in his chair. And she noticed that, and she got up and went to him and asked him if he was okay. And she noticed that he wasn't really even able to talk back to her, and she interrupted her boss and said, "I've got to get him to the emergency room. There's something wrong." So that's what type of person she was. She was a good person, and I don't know about you, but I don't pay attention in meetings. I just kind of go off into my own world, and I probably wouldn't have even noticed if someone was in pain or something like that. So she was just a kind, compassionate person who noticed that and interrupted her boss so she could make sure he gets the medical care he needs. So Dorothy and another co-worker, Pam Head, went and took Bostrom to her car and put him in the back of the car to take him to the hospital. Supposedly, she was, of course, speeding and kind of swerving in and out of traffic so she could get him to the hospital. And once they reached the emergency room and brought him in, a nurse instantly took over and took him back in for treatment. It was found that Conrad was bitten by a black widow spider, which can be very deadly if treatment is not sought immediately. Pam and Dorothy waited in the waiting room for hours until he was ready to leave, and by the time he came out, it was around 11 p.m. He needed to pick up a prescription and fill out some more paperwork for insurance purposes, and Dorothy said she would go get her car to pull it up so he doesn't have to walk too far. She stopped at the bathroom and then went to go get her car while Pam and Conrad waited. With it being after 11, the parking lot was dimly lit and there was not a lot of signs of activity, so it was pretty empty. After about 10 or 20 minutes, Pam and Conrad went outside and they saw Dorothy's car coming towards them with the headlights on, but instead it sped right by them and neither could see who was driving. They tried to wave her down and the car just passed on by, made a quick right turn out of the driveway, and then shut off the headlights and just disappeared. Conrad and Pam were confused. They thought maybe she had an emergency. There were no cell phones at that time, but Pam and Conrad waited for 2 hours to see if Dorothy would return for them, which is weird. After 2 hours, when Dorothy still did not come back, Pam and Conrad phoned Dorothy's parents' house to check to see if she had been there, and they also contacted the hospital security. Dorothy's father, Jacob, contacted the police because he knows his daughter. She's not going to just drive away from her coworkers like that. And he told the police, but they really didn't seem concerned because at that time, Anaheim had a population of 225,000 people. And at that time, it had a very high crime rate. So when a missing girl was reported or a missing adult was reported, the cop wasn't very interested. However, they soon changed their mind when several hours after she was reported missing, around 4:30 a.m., which was now May 29th, they found her car burning in an alley about 10 miles away in Santa Ana. However, Dorothy was not in there, so this escalated her case and the police started to investigate. One thing is the law enforcement told Dorothy's parents, Vera and Jacob, to stay quiet about her car being found burning, so they kept quiet. Only them and the cops knew about it. And for a week, they investigated. They, of course, thought it was probably her son's father, but he had an airtight alibi. They checked every one of her friends, acquaintances, co-workers. They did the whole search and came up with nothing. They found out about the threatening calls she was receiving and how she was taking self-defense classes and was thinking about buying a gun. But other than that, they didn't have anything. And also within a week's time, Vera received a phone call. The phone rang, she answered, and the caller said, "Are you related to Dorothy Scott?" "Yes," Vera answered. And then a male voice said, "I've got her." Then he hung up. And that was the final straw for the dad, Jacob. He's had stayed quiet about the car being found burned, and he was letting the police do their job. And when that call came, he just said, "I am calling the paper. This needs to go in the paper." So he contacted the Santa Ana newspaper and told them about their daughter's disappearance. When they ran a story on Dorothy, Pat Riley, the editor for the newspaper, received a call. It was a male voice, and he said, "I killed her. I killed Dorothy Scott. She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She denied having someone else. I killed her." And he was able to provide some specific details that convinced the editor that it was not a prank call. He knew that Conrad had suffered a spider bite and knew some personal information, so he knew it was a real call. Almost every Wednesday for 4 years, this man would call Vera and ask if Dorothy's there. He would tell her he got her, or he would tell her he has her captured, or he's killed her, and just tormented this poor family. And of course, the cops tried to trace the call. However, the caller was not on long enough for the call to be traced. They do have a recording of his voice that I looked everywhere and I could not find it, but it is described as gruff and plainly disguised. On August 6th, 1984, a construction worker discovered human remains in the brush on Canyon Road in Santa Ana. Only partial remains were located: a human skull, pelvis, two thigh bones, and an arm. A turquoise ring and watch were also located. The watch had stopped on May 29, 1980 at 12:30 a.m. The remains of a dog were also found on top of the body. The body was confirmed to be those of Dorothy Jane Scott's. And when the announcement of her discovery was in the paper, Dorothy's parents received another call, except this time, Vera did not answer the phone. She had been the one to answer the phone for the past 4 years. But instead, Jacob answered the phone. And when he heard that it was Jacob on the phone, the caller immediately hung up. And the caller never made any more calls to the house again. The case has never been solved. Jacob passed away in 1994, and Vera passed away in 2002 without ever knowing who murdered their daughter. Her son Sean, however, continues to try to find the truth about who murdered his mother, and he thinks that he knows a suspect. But before I get into that, let me go back and tell you some weird things about the case. So, one of the weird things is they made it seem like the coworker was in such distress that Dorothy urgently went to the emergency room, speeding, swerving in and out of traffic, because she had to get him there. But what they do not really report much is that before she actually made it to the hospital, she actually stopped by her parents' home to check on her son Sean and to let them know that she would be late coming home. And she also changed her black scarf to a red scarf and then continued on the way to the hospital. So that's the first weird thing. The next weird thing, people might think it's weird that Pam and Conrad would wait forever for her to pull up, thinking like, why is she taking so long to come? But you got to remember, they were picking up a prescription and filling out papers, so they might have been doing that for like 15 minutes, and they could have, for all they knew, thought Dorothy was just waiting outside there because they weren't finished. But the weird thing to me is the fact that they waited at the hospital for 2 hours waiting for her. They didn't call anyone for 2 hours. That is just weird. Also, Pam said that Dorothy never left her side the whole time, except for when she went to the bathroom before getting her car to bring it up to pick them up. And of course, there were no cell phones at that time. Another weird thing is, I just think it's kind of weird that there wasn't more information about her getting these threatening calls, because if she was that scared to get self-defense classes and get a gun, there just has to be so much more to it, and they have to know so much more. So that's weird to me. And I think this person has to have been in the same circle, like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a concept where 2 people on Earth are 6 or fewer acquaintance links apart. And I say that because, yes, she was easily stalkable because she had a normal routine. However, that day, there was a kink thrown into her normal routine. The stalker couldn't have predicted that her coworker would have a spider bite and needed to go to the emergency room. So that means the stalker had to have been sitting outside in a car at the exact right time to see her drive to the hospital and then sit at the hospital and wait the whole time until she came out of the hospital to grab her, which means he eventually would have had to have returned to pick up a vehicle that he was driving beforehand, unless there were 2 people and another one was driving. The suspect that Sean believes it could possibly be is named Michael Butler. He was an unstable individual who lived in the Santiago Mountains and was involved in cult activity. So that makes me wonder if that dog that they found above the body, was it like dead at the same time? Are there like, where's it bones to? Or was it just random? The dog happened to die also and just happened to be at the same location? It doesn't say. So I'm curious, did that dog also die when she died? Because if Butler was involved in cult activity and then there was a dead dog who died with Dorothy, that would make more sense. And apparently he was obsessed with Dorothy, and his sister worked with Dorothy at Swinger's Psych Shop. That would make the stalker know Dorothy's schedule so well. And apparently law enforcement was aware of Butler at the time, but never had enough evidence to consider him a suspect or person of interest. So that's the story of Dorothy Scott. I don't know if her changing her scarf had anything to do with anything, or it just happened to happen. I don't know if the dog died at the same time as she did, or it died at another time. And there's not a lot of information for this case. The next case is that of Cindy James. On May 25th, 1989, 44-year-old Cindy James had gone to the mall to do some grocery shopping and to deposit her paycheck from the hospital where she worked as a nurse. However, she never made it home. Her car would be found in the shopping mall where she was last seen on May 25th, 1989. When investigators went over the vehicle, they found blood on the driver's side door, and items from her wallet were thrown about outside the car. In the trunk, they found the groceries that Cindy had bought, along with a wrapped gift she had gotten for someone. For 2 weeks, her family and friends were left to wonder where Cindy was, what was happening to her. Then, the gruesome discovery of her body shocked everyone. She was found in the front yard of an abandoned house in a rather high-traffic area with lots of pedestrian foot travelers. So it initially seemed that she couldn't have been killed when she was first reported missing. But after the autopsy, it showed that she had died most likely the day she disappeared. Her body showed numerous wounds, including an injection mark on her arm. It would later be determined to be a high dose of morphine. She was found with both her hands and feet tied behind her body. Around her neck was the signature black nylon, which had been used to strangle her. What was missing from the scene was the needle used to administer the morphine. The police concocted the notion that Cindy had injected herself elsewhere, discarded the needle, then walked the 1.5 miles to the scene where she then tied her feet and hands behind her back after strangling herself. So, even if you believe all of that, it's odd that her body wasn't discovered sooner. The official cause of death was morphine and other drugs overdose, even though the RCMP, or Royal Canadian Mounted Police, claim it was suicide or possibly an accident. Coroner ruled both of those results out. So, how did it get to the point that they discovered her body hogtied pretty much like that and assume it was a suicide? Well, let's go back to the very beginning of her story. Cindy James was from Vancouver, British Columbia. When Cindy was 19, she married Dr. Rory Makepeace, who was 18 years older than her. She began working as a nurse and excelled at counseling children with emotional problems. In 1982, she filed for divorce from her husband. Then, incidents started 4 months later. On a side note, Cindy's husband was a psychiatrist, and I just think it's funny that his last name is Makepeace. It wasn't long after that she first went to her parents and told them about harassing phone calls and letters she had been receiving. When the messages turned from sinister to threatening her life, she went to the police. As the harassment continued, those who knew Cindy said they could physically see the toll it was having on her. She had always been described as beautiful and vibrant, but now she appeared tired and frayed. Then the threats escalated. Cindy found 3 dead cats hanging in her garden. Her porch lights had been smashed, and when she tried to call the police, she discovered her telephone lines had been cut. Notes started appearing on her doorstep instead of being mailed, and then soon after this, the physical attacks on Cindy herself started. Cindy's friend, Agnes Woodcock, showed up one night to visit. Agnes knocked on the door, but Cindy didn't answer. Agnes walked around back and was shocked when she found her friend Cindy crouched down, looking like she was trying to hide. Once she realized it was her friend, Cindy got up. That's when Agnes saw the nylon stocking tied around Cindy's neck. Cindy was shaken as she replayed what had happened to her. Shortly before Agnes arrived, she said she had gone into her garage to get something, and someone grabbed her from behind. They wrapped the stocking around her neck and was strangling her. The only thing she got a good look at was her attacker's shoes, which were white sneakers. Believing they got scared off and ran away when Agnes arrived, Cindy was able to escape to the backyard and hid. The notes became more dark and threatening. One left on the windshield of Cindy's car showed a corpse being pushed into a morgue. Cindy started receiving orders of raw meat being sent to her home. Once she arrived to find her dog shaking and sitting in her own feces with a cord wound around her neck tightly. Sometimes she would receive near daily threats, then nothing for long periods. But the police didn't seem to believe her stories and openly let her know. So Cindy knew she had to fight for herself. So she moved to a new house, she got her car painted and even changed her last name, and she also hired a private investigator, Ozzy Caban. Ozzy got started on her case, but he had the suspicion that his client was holding something back. When talking to Cindy's parents, they agreed they thought she was withholding crucial information. They speculated Cindy might have an idea of who was doing all of this, but was scared to say. Besides tracking down leads, Ozzy had lights installed outside of Cindy's house and gave her a two-way radio with a panic button so she could easily reach him even if her telephone line was cut again. Late one night, Ozzy heard odd noises coming across the two-way radio and rushed to Cindy's house. He found her lying in the hallway with a knife through her hand that had a note attached to it saying, "You are dead, bitch." Cindy was motionless, and Ozzy thought at first she was dead, but he found a pulse. Cindy was taken to the hospital, and after regaining consciousness, she was able to tell investigators that she felt someone put a needle in her arm, but she had no recollection of the stabbing. Police, believing Cindy staged the attack, didn't even bother to take fingerprints at her home or on the knife and note. I don't understand why they didn't even believe her. Ozzy did not believe that Cindy would have been able to inject the needle or stab herself at the angles that both entered the body. He strongly believed that someone had attacked his client. Cindy wanted to try and remember anything she could and agreed to go under hypnosis and take a polygraph test. Unfortunately, it was determined after testing that Cindy was too traumatized to be able to give useful information. The calls started picking up with frequency, but they were so short that a trace could not be made. A strange incident occurred, though. Every time the police would set up 24-hour surveillance, no calls would come in, and no notes would be left at her home. The police used this as more proof that it was all fate, but a more sinister explanation could be made that whoever was attacking her had at least information about the police movements. Her home was never tested for listening devices, and the police never did an investigation in the policeman that Cindy had recently been seeing. If the attacker really wanted to make Cindy look crazy, avoiding making themselves known when the police were watching could and would cast a lot of doubt on her story. The next attack was a rapid escalation that left Cindy hospitalized. She was found near frozen, suffering from hypothermia in a ditch over 6 miles from her home. She was left wearing a man's work boot and glove with a black nylon stocking around her neck. She had a black and blue eye and other numerous injuries and bruises to her body. After the last attack and fearing for her life, she asked her friend Agnes and her husband, Tom Woodcock, to stay with her. One night after everyone had gone to bed, they were awoken by noises in the basement. When they went to see what was going on, they found the basement in flames. As they tried to call 911, they found that the phone line was cut. Tom ran outside to ask a neighbor to call the fire department and saw a man standing in front of the house. Tom asked him to call 911, but the man instead started running away down the street and did not say anything. Police determined the fire was deliberately started and labeled it an act of arson. They searched the basement windows and said they couldn't find any usable fingerprints on the windowsills that the perp would have had to enter through. Therefore, they determined the fire was staged. Investigators also pointed to the fact that they had seen Cindy walk her little dog alone at night, that she must not be scared of an attacker. Those close to Cindy noted that her mental state seemed to be deteriorating under the pressure. Worrying that Cindy might be suicidal, her doctor committed her to a psychiatric hospital. After 10 weeks of care, Cindy was able to go home. She confessed to her family and friends that she had been holding information back. She claimed that her attacker had threatened to kill her family if she outed them. Then Cindy said that she planned to go after them herself. So yes, Cindy was in a state of mental decline and was suicidal, but who wouldn't be after going through all that for years and the police not believing you and it would be so stressful. Finally, Cindy went back to the police and told them who she believed was behind the attacks. She named her ex-husband, Dr. Roy Makepeace, who was a psychiatrist. Police spoke with him, and he denied all the allegations and then turned over evidence he had on his answering machine. Someone, supposedly who was harassing his ex-wife, had called and left a death threat for him. And here is audio of that recording. If you can't tell what it says Cindy, dead, meet soon. I'll play it again and you will probably be able to hear Cindy, dead, meet soon. Towards the end, it kind of sounded like a female to me, but who knows. Her ex-husband said he believed that Cindy was suffering from split personalities. This has never cooperated, and the medical staff and doctors who treated her while she was in the psychiatric ward never diagnosed her with this disorder. The next incident was the final one on May 25th, 1989, where she was found dead. It was the first story I told you. Ozzy believes that she had been taken and killed elsewhere, then her body was dumped shortly before it was discovered. Her private investigator also believes, along with her parents, that the police weren't interested in finding who was attacking Cindy, but trying to blame the victim. Both of Cindy's parents have passed away since then, never knowing what really happened to their daughter. Her sister, Melanie Hack, has written a book and runs a website dedicated to trying to find her sister's killer. So this again is a very weird case. I find it odd that it seems like from day one they refused to believe her, and they meaning the RCMP, and tried everything to prove that what she did was fake. Just like they said her walking her dog at night proved that she didn't have an attacker. It's like from day one they tried everything to not believe her and doubt her. And in regards to her death, police believed Cindy had accidentally committed suicide. They indicate that they believe she had drugged herself, tied herself, and stumbled and died near the abandoned house in the yard where she was found. So that was their reason. Police speculate that Cindy ingested morphine tablets and did not use a needle to inject the drug. The other drug that was more prevalent in her body was a drug similar to Valium. It was also a drug Cindy was prescribed to use to help with her insomnia. This drug, along with the amount of morphine in her system, was enough to kill her, but it would have taken between 15 to 45 minutes for the action to take effect. Police indicate that this would have given her plenty of time to tie herself up. Police also called upon an expert to look into the knots and how the restraints were bound. He concluded that one could have done exactly the same knots and tie themselves up in a similar manner with their hands and feet behind their backs. And the person also was able to demonstrate it in front of the police, and it took him less than 3 minutes to complete the task. However, Ozzy, her private investigator, who does believe that she was indeed stalked and viciously murdered, he explains that the amount of drugs found in Cindy's body would have incapacitated her, and she would have never been able to tie knots around her body, especially tying her arms and legs behind her back. He also indicates that there was no needle on or near Cindy, as would be the case if she self-injected at the site. Further, he states she was found 1.5 miles from her car, barefoot, and there are no witnesses that have come forward to say they saw her walking or injecting herself or tying herself up. So when the police said that she probably used tablets, that was probably their reason to explain away Ozzy's bang on the self-injection. And also, how the body was found, it was in decomposition. Rigor mortis had already set in, and her body was already starting to have that smell of rotten flesh. She was found in the front side yard of an abandoned house, but one that was not really uninhabited. A squatter living in a van just 5 meters from the body never noticed it for over a week, even though Cindy was wearing a white top and a jogger had spotted her from the roadway. And that jogger said they did that same route twice before and never saw a body in that location. Furthermore, teens used to use the abandoned house as a hangout spot. They indicated they would knock on the squatter's windows and rock his van to get kicks. They also indicated that they had 2 small parties that week at the abandoned house, yet despite all the traffic and reveling, had not noticed a body laying in the yard wearing a bright white top and bound up. Speculation among those that believe Cindy was actually stalked and murdered is that her body was dumped there the same day as the discovery of her corpse. Furthermore, speculation is cast upon evidence gathered by police, but not followed up upon. At 2 of the attack scenes involving Cindy, a brand of cigarette butts not belonging to her were collected. In addition, at one scene, 2 gray pubic hairs were extracted from Cindy's pubic area that did not belong to her, and it is uncertain what police did with this evidence. After Cindy's case was concluded by the coroner and an inquest into her death, her ex-husband, Dr. Makepeace, and her sister both received odd, threatening phone calls, and it is speculated that these were mean tricks pulled by pranksters. The RCMP has since refused to offer interviews about the case or the media and says that it has been concluded. I'm curious if they ever looked into her working as a nurse and seeing if she had access to morphine, and if she did, if there was a logbook or if there were any incidents of amounts not calculating to the amount that should be there. I wonder if they even kept records like that back then with those type of drugs. Who knows? But I wonder if they even checked if she had access to that or not, because I would think that would be a good starting place. I also know that females and males, but females like to get attention. You have those parents that hurt their children and they get all this attention. They do it for the attention. She wasn't getting positive feedback or positive reinforcement when all this stuff happened. Instead, she was being blamed and they would try to make her feel crazy. So it's not like she was getting anything good out of this. It was ruining her life. So I don't see why she would do any of this just to have attention. So I don't think she did it. I think the person who did it is somehow connected to the RCMP and her husband, and they are covering up for this person. That's my theory. Who knows, though? Until next time, have a good evening.